Hey, welcome back to the Bums in the Bleachers podcast. We are back to talk Cubs baseball. It's been a few weeks. I am one of the co-hosts, John, aka the Dram Daddy, alongside Mike Prazmaster Presnowski. What's going,
Hello,
Mike?
hello. I'm doing well, doing well. Happy Father's Day to you, John. Happy belated
Thanks, man.
Father's Day to all the dads that may be watching us right now. Appreciate it. Yeah, Cubs continue to roll despite what it says in our title. The offense has been a little slumping, but no, we've all feared a bit of a slide in May as it had been the last 2 years, and the Cubs didn't have that, and so far so good in June. So, you know, looking forward to a pretty big series here against the Brewers, and hopefully the Cubs can keep it going.
Yeah, man, excited to be back. It's been a few weeks again. It's man, what a crazy 2025, man. I feel like my schedule's really put a nix on us getting together a little bit more often with all the work travel and stuff. I actually was on vacation last week, which was really
Oh, that's
nice.
very nice. Yep.
Yeah, it was great. I got a chance to head out to Pittsburgh, which is where my wife is from. We saw her family. It's where I've shared on previous podcasts. I lived there for almost 5 years. I got to visit Detroit, which was a lot of fun. So I had some friends that actually live up in Detroit. So got to spend a night, do some hanging out, and then made our way over to Comerica, which was pretty cool. My first time in Detroit, really. So
Nice. I've been to Comerica a few times. Never actually seen the Cubs there. Went game in 2018, and then a game in 2023. But it's a nice park, and I kind of like the uniqueness of like how like the field is kind of below street level there. That's something like I had never
yeah,
seen in a ballpark before. Yeah, it's pretty underrated as far as like the more modern ones go. Like you never hear that get brought up in the pantheon of like PNC and San Francisco and San Diego, but like pretty nice one.
yeah. I mean, I honestly, it was really beautiful. I thought the outside stadium was really great. Right here, this is. I was sitting up in the 300 levels there, right behind the catcher. Getting a good bird's eye view of like the entire outfield and the skyline of Detroit, which was really cool. Um, you know, uh, we'll kind of get to it in the W's and L's because I've got some thoughts on Comerica both ways.
Okay.
But all in all, just a great experience. It was a lot of fun. I got to take my daughter, and my wife there. It's my daughter's first baseball game ever, which also
Oh.
feels a little sacrilegious because I didn't get to take her to Wrigley first and foremost. But tickets are not always the most attainable and
This is true.
family friendly when it comes to pricing. So
Exactly.
Detroit it was, and she had a blast. I mean, she's 5, so keeping her entertained for 9 innings can be a
I
little bit of a challenge, but
I hope I'm not spoiling anything later in the show. I remember the few times I was there, they had like a area kind of for kids that was like a play area with like a carousel and everything. Did she
they
get to
do.
experience all that and
They
everything?
do.
Or nice.
Definitely going to be part of my W's, just
Okay.
because, I mean, it gave her something to do and keep her preoccupied. It wasn't as fun for my wife, who had to stand in line to take her on the
Mm,
carousel, and it also was not in a shaded area. It was in a very bright spot of the ballpark. So sitting in the sun, waiting in line. My daughter got her ice cream, which is what she,
there you
always
go.
just craves. So yeah, it was super cool. I mean, we had a lot of fun. It's a great ballpark, really cool to see that city just kind of change and evolve.
Yep.
But yeah, we had a good time. And then we made our way over to Pittsburgh, and also got to spend some time in my old stomping grounds in Pittsburgh, and got to visit PNC.
Very nice.
So got to share. This is also you see all the fans here. This is right before the game started. This is also pretty much what it was during the game. So I got
Yeah, that's
about a
that's
couple
no surprise.
about a couple rows behind first base. Kind of kicked myself because I spent about $40 on these tickets, which really not that bad considering the view and the seats.
Right.
But also really probably could have just spent $20 and walked and snuck my way
Exactly.
down.
Do, do,
Which
do do what I used to do during the rebuild. I always used to just get the cheapest ticket on StubHub and then just find a seat with a nice view and go sit there basically.
Yeah, so it's what I should have done, to be honest with you. And just, I didn't even think about it. I was just like, it looked like it was selling out. And it was weird because a lot of the tickets actually were sold.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, there weren't really many tickets for sale when I actually when I
Hmm.
bought, but ballpark was really empty. So um kind of a weird way to boycott that team if you're Pittsburgh Pirates fans, because you're still like, you're not showing up, but you
Right.
know,
Yeah, it's
Nutting still
still
got his money.
still
So
exactly, still putting money in Bob Nutting's pocket, so
yes, kind of weird flex. I don't know if that's what you
right.
want to call it, but it was good, man. It was, it's fun. The Pirates actually won that game. They won
Yeah.
5-2.
The Pirates, not to jump ahead to talking about what they did head to head against the Cubs, but going into that series, they were pretty hot coming in against the Cubs because took 2 out of 3 in the series you saw against the Marlins. And I want to say
Yep.
they swept the Phillies right before that.
Yeah, they I mean, they've been playing pretty much near or around 500 balls since they've made their change from Shelton as their
Yep,
manager. So uh they've been turning it around. I mean, pitching has been pretty good for them. Their thing is, I mean, offense. It's just lack of offense. They just have no punch
exactly.
in their lineup, behind O'Neal Cruz, who really not having a great year. He's kind of struggling, but
Right.
also doesn't really have protection behind him either. So it's
Hmm.
he's
He
kind of a one-man show, to be honest.
he's basically in a situation right now, kind of similar to like when like Star.
Oh, I think you're freezing. I think you froze up on us there, but I think the point you were making was kind of Starling Marte, I'm assuming. But yeah, I'll just kind of jump into it. So, throughout the weeks of baseball, we obviously, we hadn't been on the show for a little bit here. Um, but we got to see, some pretty good series, over the time from our last show. I mean, we last spoke when I think the Cubs were playing the Rockies in that series. They ended up winning, sweeping that series. They took, they went against the Reds at the end of May into June. They took 2 out of 3 in that series. They took 2 out of 3 against Washington. Beating up on bad teams, it's what good teams are supposed to do. So, pretty great to see that. Just doing what you need to do, beating up on bad teams. Hit a bit of a roadblock going into Detroit, losing 2 out of 3, starting to face some pretty good pitchers there. I mean, they went through Hunter Green in Cincinnati, but he obviously was on a pitch count coming back from injury. They went against Washington's top pitcher and prospect, which obviously didn't turn out so well. But yeah, it looks like my partner's having a little bit of technical difficulties, having some problems with the internet apparently, but he'll be right back on. And then obviously they went to Detroit. They faced Tarek Skubal, which that guy's a beast. I mean, for anybody who's a baseball fan, it is really hard not to appreciate what Tarek Skubal has done over the last couple of years. I mean, he's won a Cy Young last year. Going to be really hard to debate him not winning it again this year so far. If the year were to end today, just an elite pitcher with elite stuff. I mean, just really fun to watch. Thankfully, that wasn't the game that I was at when they faced the Cubs, but they ended up going against Jack Flaherty in the second game or the third game of that series. That was the game that I went to, and Jack Flaherty's had a pretty good year so far. He stymied the Cubs offense a bit, which has been struggling a little bit, which will obviously we're going to talk about, the Cubs offense really just being pretty rough over the last few weeks. And we knew that 6-7 runs a game was not sustainable. We knew that offense, I mean, I think I heard it somewhere that if they were to maintain that offense, we're talking like 1927 skid, what do you call it? Murderers Row Yankees, right? And we're talking about an elite historical offense. In today's baseball, going to be super hard to maintain, especially with the stuff that these guys are throwing. So yeah, going to be pretty hard to maintain that, and they obviously weren't able to do that. So really tough, series against Detroit. They ended up going to Philadelphia, which I also thought was kind of interesting that they didn't play in Pittsburgh. They came home to play Pittsburgh instead of just being on the road already. I mean, you had to go to Detroit through Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. They could have played Philly, came back towards Pittsburgh, or hit Pittsburgh on the way. Just a weird, I don't know, whoever made the schedule, a little weird there, but lost 2 out of 3 to the Phillies. One of them was a nail biter. Then they ended up putting 8th spot on the board in game 2. And then again, offense, a no-show in game 3, losing 7-2. Thankfully, came at the right time. And like we said, maybe it was the right time, maybe it was the wrong time. They took 2 out of 3 from Pittsburgh, came home. The lone loss was against Paul Skeens, which, that's a tough loss. These, and listen, J-Dub, we're going to talk about these 1-run games. It actually has been pretty good for the Cubs all year long. Hey, Mike.
Sorry about that, folks. Technical difficulties. Nothing new for this show.
Yeah, so I was just kind of walking through, the week in baseball, the couple weeks in baseball, Cubs, who they face and everything like that, just kind of talking through Pittsburgh and that series. And obviously their lone loss in that series was against Paul Skeens. That was a game that I felt they should have won. Especially with Cade Horton going pretty much toe-to-toe with Paul Skeens. So
he arguably outpitched him because Skeens was out after 5. Horton did at least pitch into the 6th.
So, that's true. Yeah.
And that is one where like it's scoreless at the time Skeens comes out. And, earlier this year when the Cubs played in Pittsburgh, they did some real damage against the Pirates bullpen. So, and, they also did so in the games in this series as well, too. So yeah, that's one where like you kind of scratch your head and think like, how could we not string something together against, no offense to the Pirates bullpen, but kind of a bunch of scrubs.
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of saying it that they have been playing better. They've been playing right about 500 ball since they fired their manager, and they've been showing a little bit of life here. Their pitching has been what's really kind of carried them, over the last like few weeks after that change. Offense is still scuffling for them. That Scooble game was pretty tough too. It felt like that was a really close game too. I mean, they only lost that game 3-1 as well. I know you wanted to talk through that. So before we do that, because I know we want to talk about the struggling offense, right? And they looking back into let's go back as far as May, because I think the last we're on talking through the Rockies series when they swept the Rockies. And then we talked about, taking 2 out of 3 against Reds as a possibility, but having to face Hunter Green, who pitched pretty well. But, I had said that he's probably going to be on a pitch count, which he was coming out of injury. They won 2 out of 3 against Cincinnati. And then they started facing the buzzsaw of some really good starting pitching.
Right.
I know, what was it? Game 2 against Washington was against
Mackenzie Gore.
That was pitched a hell of a game.
Right. That was a game I remember. Like Matthew Boyd was on the other side too. He took like a perfect game into like the 6th or 7th inning. It was a real pitcher's duel, but then kind of ran out of gas at the end there. Cubs couldn't really string anything together. But it was
no runs allowed. No runs allowed till the 7th inning on both sides. So I mean, again, really close game there. And you'd hope that they'd be able to take some of these games against these elite pitchers, right? And then they face Derek Skubal. They lose that game 3-1. Skubal goes, like you said, what did he go in that game?
7 2/3.
7 2/3. And that was, they had opportunities. I mean, they had guys in scoring position. They couldn't get the clutch hit against them. I have some thoughts about game 3 because that was one that really felt like they should have gotten to Flaherty, and they couldn't get through. And I'm not one to blame umps for losses, but if you go back in that game, that was a really rough called game by that umpire. And that was the game I was at. That was the game that Nico Horner got thrown out like really early in the
game. Derek Thomas, right? I think was the home plate umpire for that one. Yeah, that was a rough one. Nico. Not to go directly into Nico here, but like his spot in the lineup after he'd gotten ejected came up later in the game when the Cubs, I think at that point we're down like 4-0, but like had two
Yep.
guys on, and it was
Mm-hmm.
Vidal freaking
Bruhan.
Bruhan
Yep.
hitting instead of Nico Horner, who had been one of the most clutch hitters, probably the most clutch hitter on the Cubs to that point.
Yeah.
So maybe things go a little bit differently there if they have Nico up in that spot.
Yeah, and that was also a game where Ben Brown, before he kind of shit the bed in his start right after that, he had a pretty good game. I mean, he went 7 innings. He gave up 2 earned runs, did scatter about 7 hits. I mean, he was definitely putting some traffic on the base pads there, but was able to get in and out of trouble. It was disappointing to see that loss for sure. And then the game against Flaherty, I think that was probably the most annoying one, was the Flaherty game for me. I mean, I was there, so maybe that's why I was more annoyed than anything.
Right, exactly. But, you're just stuck watching it.
Yeah, but it's just there was several opportunities I felt like where they had guys on and they were taking called third strikes that were outside of the zone that were just like clearly not strikes, and it was just bad. It was really tough. It was a really tough game to watch. But.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, and I actually went back and looked too, on Twitter, I don't know if they show them on Instagram too, but the like umpire scorecards for umpires. I looked back at like a couple of like Derek Thomas's games before then too, and he had been like atrocious all year. So he's someone that like maybe should keep an eye on if he's like on the pregame reports as being, one of the umpires for any of the Cubs' upcoming games. The one thing I wanted to say about
I was going to say somebody's got to take over for Angel Hernandez now that he's gone. There's got to be somebody that's got to be the worst ump in baseball. I mean, you can't.
Yeah,
it can't all be good.
CB Buckner right now, and then I don't know who else. But going back to the Skubal game, I mean, that was a game where they probably should have scored more than just the 1 run based on, they didn't get many hits strung together in the same inning, but like, there was the one instance in which, I think Seiya Suzuki had a hit that PCA moved up to third, and there was a stop sign being held up by Quentin Berry. He was kind of, and then like at the last minute, he told him to go when he was like kind of cruising into third base. And they wound up nabbing him at third base there. I mean, if, you score him there, maybe something else happens. But the thing that I took from that game specifically is that Skubal came into that game with a whip that was like under 0.8, basically. Like he had been better at keeping guys off the bases than most like elite relievers had been to that season. The Cubs were able to get 8 hits off of him in less than 8 innings pitched. So, I mean, it feel like obviously, you're not going to score 5-6 runs off of him, but like, do feel like they should have had a better chance to get some runs on the board that game.
Yeah, I mean, and also I want to say that Skubal had gone like 16 innings of. Yeah, he went. I know Skubal had gone like 16 innings without like giving up a run too before that start. So, I mean. Obviously, I want to get through some of this other because they hit Flaherty. They hit a wall against Flaherty. And then they go on to face the Phillies here. And who's the next guy that they got dominated by? Was it Wheeler? Wheeler?
The Monday game
Luzardo.
Was Wheeler.
Yeah,
and Luzardo was the last game of that series. Yep.
Yeah, Ben Brown was awful in that game.
Yeah, he was. He kind of had to wear one because he gave up some runs early. And the bullpen was a little taxed, but not a great outing by Ben Brown.
So, and I think there was some like stats too, like when they had faced like some of these ace pitchers too, like they had like they were averaging like 1 run a game or something like that versus some of these starting pitching, like these starters too, like over that string. So with that, are you concerned at all? Because, the offense, obviously it started struggling prior to facing that buzzsaw of like I said, of all these like aces in a row, so it's kind of like, there's correlation maybe that the offense started slumping around that time or slightly before or because of it. But are you concerned that they can't hit good pitching because they've gone through all these, like I said, all these starters that, are ace type pitchers, and they haven't been able to get through, even though they've been kind of, getting on base, making a little noise, but not able to get that clutch hit against some of these starters. And again, these guys are aces for reasons. I mean, Skubal is a Cy Young winner, and I was saying while you were losing internet, he's probably the best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah.
And the Cubs are not the only offense that had trouble against, Tarek Skubal. So, but are you concerned? Are you concerned that they can't hit good pitching?
Mildly, but not on a super major level. I mean, you look at it right now. So, like, they face Gore with the Nationals. They face Skubal with the Tigers. They faced Wheeler and Luzardo with the Phillies, and then Skeens with the Pirates. Of those teams that they face, the only one they're really going to see in October possibly is the Phillies. And,
maybe Detroit if all things go well.
Yeah, that's true. It would take a lot for for the Cubs to make the World Series, and and the Tigers even, because it's not always that the best team makes it. But mildly, I'd say the one nice thing was that against Wheeler, pretty sure they did hit 2 home runs. Kyle Tucker got one early in that game. Ian Happ got one late. I don't know if that was off of Wheeler or not, but they had been pretty, they had come into this road trip with like the best road record in baseball. And obviously I don't know. Did they have a road trip in April that was like that tough? Because like the schedule overall was pretty tough in April.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely faced a lot of good teams in April. Let me see if I could pull up the standings here.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is that if you go back to what they did in April, they were putting up crazy numbers then. It's going to be similar hitting conditions then when you get to October. And, they did find a way to put runs up at that point in the season. So, a little bit. I also do wonder, like, what adjustments could be made lineup wise. We're still seeing Craig putting freaking Dansby Swanson in the 5-hole when, I mean, granted, he's had a couple nice games against the Pirates, but it was working so well with him hitting like 7th and 8th earlier this year. And I hate that they ever went away from that.
The messing with the lineup is really, I think we should talk about it because it has been pretty frustrating. And I heard today there was, I think, like one of the radio hosts on ESPN was talking about moving up PCA to number 1 and having him lead off with Tucker right behind him. But then I also heard something from Jesse Rogers that, he made a really good point. It's if you put PCA first and then Tucker behind him, you've got 2 lefties. You're going to have a couple teams that are going to start doing this whole starter or opener, for these games and go left-handed heavy to get, 2 of the 3 guys out. You're already, and PCA, for everything he's done this year, he still is not great against hitting lefties. I mean, he's definitely had some moments, but when you look at his numbers, he's really struggled from the left hand, from left-handed pitching. So I don't think moving PCA up is the answer. I think, keeping PCA where I'd like to see him is, around that fifth spot, I would say, moving Swanson down to 7 or 8, like you said. If I'm constructing the lineup, I'm fine with Happ. I've been kind of, back and forth with Happ and just some of his inconsistencies, but his ability to get on base is always there. So I think keeping him in the leadoff spot makes total sense. Tucker's your best hitter. You keep him second. I think going with Seiya at third makes sense. Having a power guy with the right-handed bat, you go righty, lefty, righty, or lefty, lefty, righty, depending on which side of the plate Happ is hitting on. But I'm fine with that. And even if you move PC up to 4th, I'm okay with that too. But I'd keep him out of that first spot right now. I just don't think he gets on base enough to do that. And I definitely move Swanson on that.
It depends. Like yes, absolutely. That is my biggest issue with the lineup by far right now is Swanson hitting 5th. What I would like to see happening, and granted he hasn't really provided much power this year, but he has come through with runners in scoring position. I'd kind of like to see Nico and Dansby Swanson get switched. Have Nico hit 5th. He'll have guys on a drive in. move Dansby down to 7 or 8, where he was hitting
Yeah.
very well for that one stretch where he was hitting low, and just go from there. I wouldn't mind PCA leading off. Ian Happ is not always been my favorite player, but the one thing you can say about him in the leadoff spot, and I think Kyle Tucker has even talked about this too, that he likes that Ian Happ is someone that will make a pitcher throw a lot of pitches.
Yeah.
And then when he comes up, Tucker has basically seen his full arsenal from the on deck circle. So, I'm not going to get super picky. And credit to Ian Happ. He's had a pretty hot week too. He's finally kind of turned it around after, struggling the first few weeks off the injured list.
Yeah. All it takes is to face Pittsburgh, so.
This is true. Yes.
But he does.
Pittsburgh. He did struggle against Cincinnati though, which is the team he normally bashes as well. But true. I mean, really the whole NL Central, he hits pretty well, which hopefully that continues this week.
Yeah. And to go back to our main question, about the pitching, if they can't have good pitching or whatever, I'm not really panicking yet. I think obviously it helps being in a division where, they have some cushion here, and I think they've kept it close. And I think what's really been surprising is their pitching, for the most part, has gone almost toe to toe with some of these other aces. And all of this without the Cubs having a true ace right now, with Imanaga still on the IL, with Steele out for the year, getting some really surprise pitching. Now we've talked about it off air. We know that the other shoe's going to drop at some point with some of these guys, and I think that's cause for concern. And I think that's where Jed has already openly said that he's on the market for starting pitching primarily. Yeah. But I think, they have kept these games close. And I think when you're talking about playoffs, and the thing that I really liked what I saw against some of these starting pitching is they chased Skeens early. They got him out in the 5th. I think they work counts really deep. You had just said Ian Happ sees a lot of pitches to start a game, which every hitter behind him appreciates, because they're able to see, different arm slots, different angles where this, trying to guess what this guy is going to be throwing, different sequences. But, I'm not too overly concerned yet. I think if we start getting into, August here and they haven't beat a really good pitcher, or they haven't been able to get through, maybe I'll feel a little bit more concerned about the offense. But I think all offenses are going to struggle, right? It's just it's baseball. It's going to happen. They're going to hit these peaks and valleys of 6 runs a game, 1 run a game, and
exactly.
Well, you were off on the internet. I said if they had maintained the 6 runs a game pace that they were on, we were talking like Murderer's Row kind of historical, which is not realistic.
No, not realistic at all. Exactly. Do you still have the schedule from the road trip up handy with you? Because there is one game that I did want to point out too. That middle Phillies game, that was one where I believe the Phillies pitcher was a guy that was making his 2nd career start. He was a pretty highly touted prospect, Mick Abel, if I remember right. And that is a guy that is the type of guy that the Cubs historically, even going back to the Rizzo Bryant Baez days, have always kind of struggled with, is facing a rookie for the first time. And, they were able to put up some crooked numbers against him. They drove him out of the game early. So happy to see that, especially coming up, tomorrow night, facing Jacob Mizorowski of the Brewers. That maybe, they might not have as bad a time as you might think with them, but as we'll get into it, that guy does throw really nasty,
oh my God,
hundreds, into multiple innings as a starter.
I was showing my wife, I follow Pitching Ninja on Instagram, which if anybody who's watching doesn't follow, and you're just a baseball geek or nerd, I highly recommend following. Shows you some of the nastiest pitches that some of these guys throw, and, tells you all the different degrees and angles and, beyond miles per hour. It shows you all the different, dropping points from some of these off-speed pitches,
and spin rates and
all of it. Right. So you get all of that stuff. And Mizorowski, I was showing my wife yesterday. I mean, she was incredibly disinterested, but I could watch it over and over. Mizorowski threw a 102 fastball, a 96 mile per hour slider, an 89 mile per hour changeup, and a 92 mile per hour curveball.
Wow.
None of that is fair. Like none of it is like
not
as a
like
hitter.
Yeah,
And it
he got
all
92 with his curveball.
right. And I
Jeez.
was like, I was like explaining, I was telling my wife, I was like, this is criminal. Like, this is these, it's like you're basically creating a video game character of the perfect pitcher. And you're putting all these in your, you do those little level bars, like, for, from 0 to 99 rating or whatever.
Yeah,
And you're
let's go
taking
for
those bars.
99 on everything. Yeah.
Yeah. You're putting 99 all the way up, speed, velocity, arm angle, like all this stuff. It's unreal what this guy has been able to do in his first start. And yeah, it's it does make it seem like hitting, but it really, I mean, it goes to show how hard hitting really is, especially in this era where these guys are throwing 96 mile per hour sliders. You know what I mean? Like that's some guy's four seamer. That's most guys four seamer. And this guy's throwing something that's breaking 21 inches off the plate or into the plate, or breaking in on the hands at 96 miles per hour. It's just insane. I love that sight. And I watched this yesterday and I was like, God, I hope the Cubs don't face them in this series. And sure enough, they have to face them tomorrow, which I know you're going. And I don't envy you because I feel like that. I think tomorrow's going to be a really frustrating night.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the thing that will be nice is if they can, do what they didn't really do in, most of that road trip. They did do it to Skeens. Just get him out of the game early because, I don't know if you mentioned this at all when, I had my internet issues, but Cubs bullpen has been really resurgent. And I looked it up today. The Cubs bullpen right now, fourth in ERA. I want to say the Brewers are down by like in the 20s, which was like, unheard of for them. But maybe that's just the magic of Craig Counsell.
Yeah, it's in, J-Dub in the comments mentioned it earlier, like feeling like, tired of these 1 or 2 run games or whatever. But if you listen to us, and you watch our show, we talked about it on our last podcast. I think one of the things that was a potential harm to the Cubs, or what could have been a harm, is that at this point when they were blowing teams out, we had no idea who the closer was going to be. Is it going to be Presley? Is it going to be, Palencia? Is it going to be, Porter Hodge before he got hurt, right?
Yeah.
We had no idea. And I don't even know if we still know that answer, but I think you're starting to see more opportunities where we can figure out this answer before we get to September because of these 1-run games. And you sent me this, you texted us to me, I think yesterday or Saturday, record in 1-run games. The Cubs are 12-6. So obviously a +6 differential there. And this is a stark difference from last year where the team had led the league in blown saves, had a really, atrocious 1-run game record. And this year they've turned it around. And then you can see here, if we're, we're looking at the standings again, or just over the last couple of games, they won a 2-1 game. They won a 3-2 game against Pittsburgh. They won another 3-2 game against Pittsburgh. A couple of those were in extra innings where, the bullpen was able to not let the free runner at second score, right? They won what was it? Let's see. It was I think the other 2 were blowouts, but going back to Cincinnati, I think they won a close game there. 2-0.
Yeah, Saturday. Yes, that's right.
They won 2-1 against Colorado, 4-3 against Colorado, 3-1 against Colorado. So the blowouts are great. I love the blowouts, and I, as a fan, would much rather see the blowout because it gives me a little bit more comfort and less anxiety. But I think there is some benefits to having some of these close games that feel tighter, and you're feeling the playoff like atmosphere. You're feeling the fans get up and get loud because I think it does ready you in some ways for September.
Yeah. You know what? You did bring up a good point too, because like, I feel like a lot of the wins they had between, say, when that game that Presley blew against the Giants was in extras. up until about like Memorial Day, I feel like most of their wins had been like ones that were pretty comfortable, that like ones that, obviously you enjoy. You don't
Yep.
really get a real gauge on what your bullpen, on how good your bullpen is in those type of games, though, if they're just going out there with 5 or 6 run leads. So yeah, I mean, that's a great point you raised there. That they have found a way to keep these close games from being blown or tied, or it's been nice to see like bullpen really like come through in some very high leverage situations lately.
Yeah, and even Presley's been kind of thrown back in the mix for closing. I think he had an opportunity and got a save there, and then they went back to Palencia the game after that, I want to say. I think it's nice to have those
Thursday
options.
against Pittsburgh, he got the save. Yep. He I could see him every now and then still being in the mix for a save situation, just because Palencia like has been great as closer. The one thing you maybe don't want to do with him is working more than like 3 days in a row, something like that, because he is still pretty inexperienced at it, and like he means that, like
I think you're freezing on us again.
game in Philly.
Yeah, you're freezing up a bit. Yeah, you're freezing up a bit still. Nope, just lost Mike again. But one thing I wanted to point out, and I'll bring it up when Mike comes back here, is the game that Palencia had his save. Let me bring Mike back here. There we go. Hey, Mike. One of the points I wanted to make too is, one of the games, I think the game that Presley had a save. I don't know if you've caught this, because I think like I was looking at Cubs Twitter and stuff, and people were like, "Oh my God, like Presley is, as the closer again." Palencia pitched the inning before, and that was also through the heart of the lineup, which they still used Palencia in the right spot to get out of the 8th inning. I want to say, I can't remember who he had faced in that lineup, but I want to say it was like O'Neill Cruz, McCutchen, Reynolds, or something like that.
McCutchen, I think, Nick Gonzalez, and
it was Reynolds.
O'Neill
and
Cruz
Horwitz.
hit lead off, so probably yes, Horwitz.
Yeah. Yep. So he faced the I guess for that lineup the power of their order. And then they hand the ball over to Presley against, the back half of that lineup. So, thought it was the right move. For all the shit that we give Craig Counsell for maybe not being the bullpen guru we thought he was going to be, actually made a pretty solid choice there. Putting Palencia in that spot, and again allowing Presley to ease back into a closing situation and still get some of that experience. So. It'll still be interesting to see how the rest of the year goes and who their closer is going to end up being.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, J-Dub. So yeah, 2, 3, 4 in that lineup is when Palencia went. So, and another good point here. Yeah. Having one of the best defenses in baseball definitely helps. It doesn't hurt. I'll say that.
I do remember too. I should have sent this to you too, but I was talking with a buddy of mine, like after that game that Palencia pitched the 8th, Presley pitched the 9th. There was a ball that Tommy Pham hit that, thank God he got on top of it, because I went back and looked, and the exit velo was about 105 on it. And if he had gotten any type of lift on it, that's probably like floating in Lake Michigan right now at this point. But
probably so. Yeah, I'd be interested to see.
Well, he induced a ground ball. And here we go. Wait. You got me?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I'm interested to see. I'm gonna pull this up here on Fangraph. I'm gonna look at Palencia. I'm interested to see their. Let's see. I'm gonna pull up Presley. I'll pull up. Let's pull up Keller. I'm interested to see their FIP. just considering, let's see. So Daniel Palencia right now has an ERA of 2.57. I'm sorry, he has an ERA of 1.73. His FIP is 2.57. So even without, without the defense, still would be a pretty good reliever. Ryan Presley currently has an ERA of 3.54, has a FIP of 3.57. So he is who he is. He's starting to,
right on
come
par.
back. Yeah, he's coming back. Brad Keller has an ERA of 2.16 and a FIP of 2.23. So also very much right on par with who he is. So defense helps, sure, but I think to your point, this bullpen is definitely starting to come together a bit. So, and it hasn't been completely reliant on the defense.
Yeah. This, there is going to be a little bit of a crunch too, as far as someone might go when either Porter Hodge or Shota Imanaga come back. There will be log jams in both the rotation and the bullpen as well too. And, maybe more further back in the season when, Presley had the blow up outings he had, he would have been the easy guy to pick to cut from that group. But it's going to be a tough choice now coming up, whenever it is that Hodge and Imanaga find their way back to this team. Because, you got, there's no one really, that far down on pecking order you'd say, you don't want on this team at least.
I
think
the
easy answer to me would be, getting rid of, Genesis Cabrera, but go ahead.
No, I think Ben Brown is probably going to be the most likely casualty, to be honest with you, for one of two reasons,
Right.
and it's not because of poor performance over the last game, because he's had some good performances prior. I think one, he probably has the shortest leash in this rotation with Craig Counsell. I think that you can see there is a lot more frustration. I think Craig probably has a little bit of a shorter leash with younger pitchers who are not throwing strikes and putting guys getting free passes and stuff like that. So I do think that could be part of it. I think also they would probably move him to AAA at that point because of just continuing to have him in a starter's role and make sure that he's not losing, being part of a rotation as well. So I do think that Ben Brown will probably be the guy that goes down more than likely if he's not moved to the bullpen. But if they view him as a starter, I think that's where they move him to AAA, and so he can still get his innings in. So, and maybe they watch his inning count and then bring him up, later and for September call-ups, and can make that run with the playoff team at the back end of that bullpen.
Yeah, possibly. I would maybe go back to, if you still have Fangraphs up right now, on his ERA versus FIP, he has the biggest difference in what his ERA versus FIP is. His FIP so far this year is 3.60. And he's still probably the best strikeout pitcher in the rotation at this point, 10.24 per 9. Actually done pretty well at cutting down on the walks, only 2.82. But he is getting hit pretty hard as far as, it's staying in the park, thankfully, but he is allowing a decent amount of hard contact. And, that's something that if the time comes, probably will be sent to Iowa and work on that.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm a big Ben Brown fan. I'm a huge fan of him. I think that I like him for the reasons you just said. He's a strikeout guy in that rotation that they, I love to have in a rotation at the top end. It's a 2-pitch pitcher. There's definitely going to be some limitations to what he can do long term if he doesn't develop a third pitch. So, and I think for him, it's every time he goes out there, he's getting out there right around the 5th, 6th inning, because once he faces the lineup at their time, those numbers, for most pitchers, the numbers spike up. For him, it is pretty dramatic. So, it'll be interesting to see. And I think the other part of it too, we want to talk about, because it's trade season has already started. We want to talk about the Devers trade and maybe some of the implications it has on the Cubs, but I think the Cubs are going to trade for some starters. It's maybe 1 or 2 starters too. So that's going to affect who's in the rotation, who's in the bullpen.
Yeah, good. You wonder, like, now that the Red Sox, I don't know if fully committed to something, but they're definitely a worse team than they were yesterday. Now that they have one of the 10 or 15 best hitters in baseball on their team, they have continued to stay high. Just came off.
Well, you're freezing up again, Mike.
You kind of got me.
Yeah, you're still freezing up again. Yeah. Still freezing up, but a little bit better right now, I guess.
Okay. Well, the point I'm making is that, the Red Sox may fall off a little bit, and there may be options available. We were talking last week going after Earl again. If you get him at stage, or you may not put him in the closer role at this point, because, you're going to be facing J-Dub. I like that. Mike is on my work internet. Yeah. If you had seen our first, it's been worth what your work internet is probably. The Red Sox are a team you may reach out to now. What it would also mean too is that, sadly, Seiya Suzuki might get screwed out of being an all-star this year. Presumably for the Giants, he gets there. The entire reason from the Red Sox is he didn't want to play first base for them after they got Alex Bregman. So I did say he won't play any position there. We'll see where that shakes out. But the Cubs do go to San Francisco this year. San Francisco is like right on the heel of the Dodgers for the West lead. So could possibly play a factor in, if they're able to surpass them. I don't foresee that happening, but could play a factor in like where the Cubs wind up seeding wise in playoffs should they make it that far.
Yeah, the Devers trade was definitely an interesting way to start off the trade season. The fact that it also started so early in the season, I think, was kind of a shock. Because there's still some time to really, to get some of these trades in order. And this felt, somebody had likened it to the Luka Doncic trade to the Lakers, where that kind of like materialized like in the wee hours of the night. And, nobody even knew that it was on the radar. They weren't really calling around other teams saying like, hey, this guy's available. I think we had heard the rumblings between, Devers and Boston and, the front office and not getting along and not wanting to play certain positions and really kind of pushing back and not wanting to do those kinds of things, per his contract or per, his wants. But Boston's, they've done some really weird things here. Trading Mookie Betts was obviously, we were texting last night, different GM, but still very much a boneheaded move, in my opinion, trading away one of your best hitters that you've ever had. Wild trade, but do you think, and I think we just lost Mike again. So I mean, losing Devers right now, Boston sits at 38 and 36. They're about 5.5 out in first place against the Yankees. They are right now the third wild card team. As it stands, they have only got about a half game lead against Minnesota, Seattle. They've got a 1 game lead against Texas, Cleveland. The Angels are only 2.5 behind them right now. The Royals are only 3 behind them. Which, man, I think this is the fun thing about baseball. And I think this is what I like about adding that third wild card team. Welcome back, Mike. I was saying, adding that third wild card team, I think has been such a good thing for baseball because you've got all these teams that are really clumped in on this wild card right now. And like, even with Boston trading away Devers, they're still in that third wild card spot as it stands. And they're probably going to get worse. I mean, they took their best WAR player away. And,
right.
didn't really get much in return for him. So if they do take steps back, they could be sellers here. We talked Chapman as being a possible candidate. That could be interesting, bringing him back. But yeah, there's not many teams that I think that are in full sell mode right now.
Right.
I think
At
even
this point, it's probably just all the last place teams, and then maybe the Rangers, since they're
I'd
pretty
say
far down under 500. But
right now it looks like Baltimore, the Athletics, the White Sox. Obviously, I think those three teams are just there. I mean, they were eliminated in April.
yeah,
Baltimore
well,
wasn't.
I was
Baltimore
gonna say
wasn't.
Orioles,
But
not so much.
yeah, Baltimore wasn't. That's a shock. But they're at this point. I mean, they're not. They're not getting any better now. And then the Rockies. I mean, they were eliminated in 2023, so we already knew they were going to be junk. You got the Pirates, and then you got the Marlins. I think those two teams obviously are sellers. I think the Nationals are sellers. They could be sellers, but
Yeah, they've fallen back. Yep.
I don't know what they're really going to be selling at this point because they have such a young core.
Right.
Atlanta could be interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because they dug themselves in a hole in April basically with that bad start and never really recovered from it.
Yeah, if you remember, I think last year they were under 500, made a run towards the trade deadline. So, and I think right now they're saying they're still buyers. So we'll see with them, but
that's a tough division to try and.
It is, and that's where it's. I mean, Chris Sale could be interesting for the Cubs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It could be fun.
The guy that I think I have my eye on is from Baltimore. I believe Sagano is because he is only on a 1-year deal there. And I wonder if there's any, with most of these guys coming over from Japan or Asian America, they typically do have a no trade clause in their contract because, if you're uprooting your life like that to move halfway across the world, you're typically, don't want to get traded year one. This guy signed only a 1-year deal. So, maybe did that. Well, he wasn't expecting to come to a bad Orioles team, but maybe he might be considering it differently now that he was expecting to play for a competitive team.
Yeah, for sure. I know. So before we move on, we want to talk through all-star voting and rankings, but you wanted to give some flowers. So I'm going to give you the floor here.
Sure. Yeah. The guys I want to talk about here, I mean, got one guy in particular who's gotten a lot of shit on this show in particular, but give it up to Jameson Taillon because he has become a quality start machine every time he's gone out there. And it feels like maybe it's because him, as the rotation is constructed right now, often he'll be the guy that starts the game after Ben Brown starts, when he was really struggling. Yep. It feels like it's always an occasion where he will go out and he'll give you the 6-7 innings that the bullpen needs, when in the previous day the bullpen had to pitch 4 or 5, maybe in 6 innings when Ben Brown had struggled mightily. But I mean, other than I can only think of 2 starts. One, when they got back when they restarted the season in Arizona after spring training, and then one against the Mets. Those are the only 2 starts I can think of with Jameson Taillon so far this year, in which he has not given the Cubs a chance to win. So he's been excellent. And then Matthew Boyd, another guy who just goes out there and will give you 6 strong innings. And the thing I've come to love about him so far is he is a very efficient, quick worker. He will get guys not always out, but he will be done with the plate appearance after 2-3 pitches. So those 2 guys carrying the rotation after the top 2 guys in the rotation, Steele was gone in April, Imanaga gone in what was it, early May. We haven't seen him since. Way to hold down the fort, guys.
Yeah, it's been pretty impressive, and I think it's also really given Jed the ability to pause and not have to panic and make an overpaid trade this early on in the season because they continue to win series. They continue to get, good, solid starting pitching. To your point, the bullpen is starting to come together now. The hitting has been timely for the most part, except for the last couple weeks stretch here. But yeah, those guys have given Jed the ability to really come from a position of leverage currently, where it's like, hey, like they know we need starting pitching, but we don't need to overpay right now. We can wait it out and see, how the chips fall, in our way, in our favor later as we get closer to the trade deadline. So it will be interesting to see what the next couple weeks bring. Hopefully Matthew Boyd continues this. I think we obviously have some concern with Matthew Boyd because he hasn't gone a full year, and I don't know, since I think 2021 was his last full year.
Not even that. I think you got to go back to 2020. Yeah, 2020, where he made
it's also a short year.
Short year. He made the 12 starts that most other pitchers did, but how much can you really put into that? Probably before that, you got to go back to
2019.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasant surprise. I mean, we were a little bit up in arms. I don't know, maybe a little bit more than me than you when they paid $14 million for Matthew Boyd in the offseason. And I thought that was going to be, I was like, that's what you're spending your money on. And, it's been a pleasant surprise. They got him in the pitch lab. He obviously had a good finish to last year with Detroit and carried that over into this year. So it's been nice. I definitely, I'll eat crow on that one. It's been good to see him pitch very well. And like you said, Taillon's been really good too. And I think that's the pitcher that they thought they were spending on when they got Taillon, was somebody's going to give you 6 innings, 3-run ball every outing, and, put you in a position to win each game.
Yeah, he's honestly, this year and last year have been right on par with what he had always done with the Pirates and Yankees earlier in his career. As we got into All-Star talk, I mean, Matthew Boyd at this point too, by the way, he's like under, he's not going to get voted in. It's the pitchers get picked by the managers, Dave Roberts, right? Well, he's got an ERA under 3 at this point. He puts together another, 2 or 3 starts like he has. He might be right there.
Yeah. So All-Star voting right now, and we got to take some of this with a grain of salt. I mean, Cubs fans always come out in drones when it comes to droves, I should say, to vote for, the top guys and stuff. I mean, some of these big market guys are always going to get a bigger fan base that votes for them. PCA, look at PCA. He is it second in the NL in all voting, right behind Ohtani? Is that correct?
Or yeah, wow. 1.1 million, 1.4 million basically for Ohtani. No, Freddie Freeman is a little bit ahead of him, but
still top 3 for a breakout year for Pete Crow. Not too shabby. I think Pete Crow definitely deserves it. You got Kyle Tucker up there. I know we talked about the catching and pulling 2 catchers.
Right. I'm a little bit not campaigning as hard for Carson Kelly as much, but I did think earlier in the year when Cubs catchers collectively as a whole were leading that position group in offense.
The Inamaya being out 4 to 6 weeks obviously put a stop to that.
Hey, the carjacker has been helping with that. Shout out Reese McGuire.
And then, like we said, with Devers coming over from Boston to San Francisco, that could put Suzuki in a tough spot when it comes to the All-Star voting, because we don't know where he's going to play yet. Is he going to play first? Is he going to play designated hitter? Does that hurt his chances either way, because we don't know which position he's going to play? Does he primarily stay to 1? Does he hurt Michael Busch's chance potentially at first base? Does he hurt Suzuki's at designated hitter? I don't know. I mean, it's going to be pretty funny to see where Devers ends up playing, considering he didn't want to play first for Boston.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, J-Dub, thank you very much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I'll catch you on Blue Sky. Appreciate the follows and everything. The one that I am most fascinated by is the second base race right now, because, Nico Horner, again, hasn't really hit for power, but has been the Gold Glove at second base.
Yeah,
he's hit very well for average and on base. Still is stealing a lot of bases. Tommy Edman of the Dodgers is ahead of him. That has got to be the most over love for a fan vote you'll ever see, because as we stand right now, Nico Hoerner's batting average is higher than Tommy Edmonds' on base percentage.
Yep.
Nico Hoerner's hitting 288. Tommy Edmonds on base is 283. So let's try and get Nico above Tommy Edmond there, Cub fans.
Well, like I said, this is where, the fan vote stuff all comes into play, right? Where it's, this is where I think any all-star voting is just, it's tough. I don't know if you leave it to the fans, or you should leave it to the players and, coaches or organizations. I'm not sure, but I don't know what the right thing to do.
Like the right ones to me.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones who, or maybe you should, do the sort of like, how they do like the NBA GM survey every year for basketball. Yeah. And, they always ask like, which players do you have to game plan for the most? Like whoever has the most answers for that, that's who should really be there. But
what do you think about going like what the NBA tried doing and selecting 2 captains? Maybe you have Shohei Ohtani on one side,
Aaron Judge on the other,
on the other, and you pick your all-star team.
That would actually be pretty fun. I'd like that.
It could be fun for baseball. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that could be pretty interesting if they do it NBA side. I think it'd be a lot more interesting than what the NBA is working with right now. But because I mean, as you could really craft, and maybe give guys a chance to be all-stars that maybe not necessarily would be thought to be all-stars. Like maybe you get Aaron Judge that's like, you know what? I value defense. I want, a strong second baseman and shortstop playing up the middle for me, playing defense. And you're getting guys that, maybe not hitting 30 home runs a year, but they're playing Gold Glove defense, right? So, I don't know, just throwing that out there. So maybe Manfred's watching, maybe not, but if he's not, and somebody's got an in, definitely pass that idea along.
Right.
All right, let's jump into player A, player B, because we got to wrap up before this game starts.
For sure. All right, so player A, player B. All right, both guys are active on this. Both guys are pitchers on this. So we got player A, who has made 8 appearances, and they've all been starts. He's pitched 34 and a third innings, has a record of 1-1, a 4.72 ERA, 24 strikeouts, 22 walks, 29 hits, 6 home runs allowed, a 225 opponent's batting average, pitched to a 1.45 whip and a 0.1 baseball reference win above replacement. We have active player B, who has made 7 appearances. 6 of them have been starts. He's pitched 36 and a third innings, has a record of 3-1, 3.47 ERA, 29 strikeouts, 8 walks, 36 hits allowed, 4 home runs allowed, a opponent's batting average 255, a whip of 1.211, and dead even on WAR 0.0. So between these two,
this feels easy for me, and I could tell you right away, the 22 walks to 8 walks is gonna make it really easy for me to pick every time, 10 out of 10 times. Okay. So I'm gonna go player B. I mean, 8 less walks in 2 more innings pitched. Player A putting a lot of guys on base.
For sure,
and a little bit with fire there.
Do you happen to have any guess on who these guys are?
I do not. No, I don't.
Okay. All right. I mean, I can't fault you for either choice you would have made there, but the stats do kind of favor player B more. Player B who you picked, that is Cubs rookie Cade Horton, who has been phenomenal so far. And
like it.
I wouldn't have thought that his walks would be that low, but that's pretty damn good for him.
Yeah.
Player A, probably a guy who was like number 1 on our offseason wish list this past offseason. That is Dodgers rookie Roki Sasaki.
Wow.
He has not gotten off to a great start out in LA.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take it. I mean, way to go, Cade.
Yeah, absolutely. If only there was some kind of like all rookie game, maybe he would make that, but probably not.
Hey, Manfred, another idea right there.
There you go. Exactly.
We're just spitting out ideas for MLB. This is how you get young fandom, right? Like, put us in charge. All right. I know you got it on this day for us, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and.
For sure. So this goes back to 2015. also in 2015, a year ago. And that year, I think yesterday or the day before, is when the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
But the Cubs they played a little bit of a weird series because they played 2 games at Wrigley against the then Cleveland Indians. And then they went to Cleveland and played the Cleveland Indians there in a World Series preview of the next year. And in this game, the Cubs would maybe have probably their most dominant win of that season. They won that game 17-0. And 2 rookies stood out in that game. One of them had his first career hit in a 4-hit game, including a triple.
Okay.
And the other one, later in the game, when a position player was on the mound for Cleveland, hit his first career grand slam. Do you know who those 2 players are?
So the first one, again, you said was a rookie that had his first hit.
His first career hit in that game, which was part of a 4-hit game, and that included a triple, too.
Okay.
And then the other one hit his first career grand slam. It was in the 9th inning off of a position player.
You said, what did he hit off a position player? I'm sorry, that last part.
A grand slam.
A grand slam.
Mm-hmm. The first of his career.
All right. I'm going to say that position player 2015. So that was the year that Bryant came up. Addison Russell came up that year, right? It was 2015.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Schwarber was another guy who came up.
Yep.
They had a lot of rookies that year.
Yep.
4 hits. Man, I feel like 4 hits in a game. It feels like KB, but I don't remember that being, because I feel, was that the series that there was it the Arrieta versus Kluber or John Lester versus Kluber, and the game ended like 1-0, and it was like on a KB home run? Was that the series?
So that game was a makeup game later in the year because one of the games at Wrigley got rained out.
I'm going to say KB. I'm going to say Chris Bryant.
Well,
for the first one.
He's the other one. He's the one who got the grand slam off the position in this game.
Okay.
And then the guy, you want me to just tell it?
So it's either Schwarber or Russell. I'm going to say Schwarber because I think Schwarber got off to a better start than Russell.
That is correct. It was Kyle Schwarber.
Okay.
Who, he came into a game in one of the games in Chicago against the Indians, and he had like 1 appearance and struck out. But then, that game he wound up he wound up getting 4 hits, including a triple. It was like a very brief window where they had him up just for those games so he could DH because they didn't fully trust him in the field yet. But what a way to come on the spotlight hot there, Schwarber, and then. The next year, he'd really enjoy that ballpark in October.
Yeah, well, that was he's missed the whole year and then came back just to bash Cleveland. So
exactly.
All right, let's wrap up here. We got find the W's and taking the L's.
Hello, you play to win the game.
Addison is next. Doors open on the left at Addison.
I say one thing. Go. Let's go. That's a W. That's E1. That's E1. That's a W.
Is a L7 winning.
All right. So I'm going to make it quick for me. I had the W's and L's here. Comerica Park got a W and L for me. I know I said at the beginning of the show, they get a W and L. One, great experience. Really loved like the inside of the ballpark. Having that carousel there for the kids was super clutch. Really beautiful on the inside, really well done. I'm going to give them an L for 2 reasons though. One, when we were entering the ballpark, I missed an entire inning because there was only one line to take bags in. Any parent that has children you have to carry diaper bag paraphernalia. You got to have your wipes, you got to have your hand sanitizer, you got to have all that stuff right next to change of clothes just in case. I mean, that's just part of being a parent, right? So we carried a really small bag, really tiny, like literally a sling. We fit it all into a sling so we didn't have to carry a big bag. There was literally one line to get the people with bags in. I waited in line for 20 minutes before somebody was like, hey, there's another line over there that there's no line. And I'm like,
oh man,
you see this line, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that was brutal. The other thing that I really was super bummed about. So their biggest sponsor for Comerica is Little Caesars, which is
of course fitting,
based in Detroit.
Used to be owned by the guy who owned the Tigers, I believe.
Correct. What a huge bummer that was, though, because the only Detroit style pizza you can try to get in the ballpark was Little Caesars.
Damn,
and
nobody's there.
I was so looking forward to trying, actual Detroit style pizza, even though I know in a ballpark wouldn't have been as good as like, a local restaurant or something like that, but just still to at least try it. I did not do Little Caesars. So you can,
I can't blame you there. Yeah.
that was a bummer. So, definitely disappointed there. So a couple L's there, but for an overall W for them.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can understand that. And like, with Comerica, with the Tigers kind of like having this recent resurgence, like maybe they're not all that used to handling bigger crowds and everything after kind of a longer period of little irrelevance there. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Wrigley probably does it the best for getting fans in, if we're being totally honest.
Yeah, no, they're great.
Like, you just go through those scanners and you're good.
Yep.
Don't have to open the bags or anything.
Nope.
Yeah. All right. My W for today is, these are all going to be baseball related. My W for today is going to be the Philadelphia Phillies, specifically their manager, Rob Thompson, or is it Thompson, right? Rob Thompson?
I think
Is that
so.
his name? Yeah. And, this was influenced by apparently yesterday, Nick Castellanos made some comment towards him that he felt was inappropriate. And today it was announced that Nick Castellanos would not be in the lineup today. Now, if you have a decent understanding of what is going on in the world over on the other side of the globe with Iran and Israel right now, maybe it's a good thing that Nick Castellanos is in the lineup, because maybe if he had hit a home run tonight, that would have started the war, as Nick Castellanos home runs often do. So W to Rob Thompson for that.
Oh, that's a very interesting take.
Yes.
All right. Any else that you got, or?
Got a few L's, and they're all kind of centered around the Boston Red Sox. Obviously, an L for mishandling this whole Rafael Devers situation. An L to Red Sox pitcher Hunter Dobbins, who, if you saw, made a comment to either the Boston Globe or one of the papers there, saying that like he would never play for the Yankees if they were the only team that offered him a contract or something like that. He wound up mouthing off some comment over to Aaron Judge too in the same game, and he said it was because like his dad made him a Red Sox fan after his dad pitched professionally for, I think he was drafted by the Yankees and they cut him, and his dad always had a grudge against the Yankees his whole life. Turns out that was never the case. His dad did pitch in independent ball, but was never actually drafted by the Yankees, never pitched in the Yankee system. So you've been duped there, Mr. Hunter Dobbins. And, a superstar like Aaron Judge doesn't really give a crap about what you have to say. So, and then one that you brought up to me before we started going was apparently the scout for the Red Sox who was fired. Let me get his name here. Carl Mosch was fired during a Zoom call with Craig Breslow, former Cubs front office member, who the top guy in Boston, called him a fucking stiff, which kind of right about that as far as, this trade goes.
Not wrong.
I'm giving the L to him for getting fired, or more so the L for firing him, but someone's getting the L in that scenario. So
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's recap real quick. We got 3 against the Brewers starting tonight. And then you've got 3 against Seattle coming to town. So you've got a 6-game homestand here. Maybe some potential bad weather coming in tomorrow. So we'll see. Hopefully they can still get that game in. It is a night game. It looks like a lot of the rain will be during the day. So we'll see. But 3 against Milwaukee, 3 against Seattle. What you got?
Well, as you know, hopefully this, I'm trying to think. Last time when we recorded, was that a game they won or did they lose? That was probably during the Rockies series.
Yeah, they won. They swept the Rockies, so we're back on track.
Okay, we're back on track. And the Cubs are back at home. One underrated part about tonight too that I don't know if many people know, but like Ben Brown, the one team that he has owned in his career so far has been the Brewers. Took a no-hitter into the 7th inning last year.
I was at that game.
Yep, pitched in that blowout game in the first game up in Milwaukee. So got him winning tonight. I think I'm going to say they're going to win tomorrow as well too. It may be one where they don't get on the board early against Mizorowski, but attack their bullpen. Got Jameson Taillon going, and then just for the hell of it, I'll give the Brewers a win because not every series against great teams not every series against good teams can be swept like that. So give them a win. Then this weekend against Seattle, I know Logan Gilbert is going to pitch the Sunday game of that series, and that'll be a tough one. I'll be there for the Saturday game, but more than anything, the Seattle offense has been really, really struggling. They're basically the same team as they were last year. They could pitch very well, but they cannot hit for anything. I'll also say 2 out of 3 there too. I think they win tonight, tomorrow, lose on Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday win, lose on Sunday.
Okay, I like it. I think so. I think they win 2 out of 3 against Milwaukee here. They have been really good against the division so far this year, which has been a really big change considering how bad they were last year.
Oh, God, they were so bad.
Kyle Tucker has a double to lead off the game here. Well, not lead off, but
got the first hit.
Yeah, got the first hit. So, I'm going to say 2 out of 3 against Milwaukee. I'm going to say sweep against Seattle.
Sweep.
I'm going to say the offense. I'm going to say the offense gets back on track here with the warm weather here and the ball maybe flying out a little bit more. Seattle's been scuffling a little bit. Like you said, their offense has been struggling. I think the Cubs offense gets back on track. So, yeah, let me be a little bit more optimistic. So
okay.
I'm going to go 5-2 on this homestand.
It's funny. You're typically always way more optimistic in these predictions part of the shows than I am, even though I'm the more optimistic one overall.
And I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I've been right the last few predictions. I've been calling some pretty good records. So I got to go back and look at my history, but I feel like I've been right more times than not.
Yeah. Good call. I do just, I guess the one thing with Seattle too to factor in is like, they get to play their home games indoors. They're coming outdoors. Maybe you get some nice wind at Wrigley that blows out for you, and a much more tighter outfield too than what they're used to in Seattle as well too. So, yeah, I could definitely see them sweeping Seattle. Hopefully that's the case.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody jumping on, joining in the comments. Definitely continue to follow us, subscribe, like, comment, all that jazz. We'll be back hopefully next week. I think, I should be in town for a couple weeks not traveling, which will be nice. So I do know that one of the Mondays I won't be able to because I got Wu-Tang coming up July 7th. I'll actually be at the UC. So
Wu-Tang forever.
Yeah. All right. For the children. All right. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Have a good night. Go.